So, I got a phone call here a minute ago, so I had to stop recording the video, and I decided to just kind of recap on what I was talking about, just get rid of it, because at first it started out just kind of aimless rambling. I'm not going to say that it won't end up that way now, but anyways, so at first, I'm like, I didn't know what to talk about, right? So I started talking about dragonflies because I seen one fly by, and I noticed the dragonflies are a lot smaller. They used to be bigger, and then I went out over to Shafter out in the countryside, and I seen big giant dragonflies that I hadn't seen since I was a kid. And then I began to think about how the urban sprawl is just kind of changing everything, and plus it kind of starts getting built right on top of all the places I grew up and like to go and hang out to, still. And then I couldn't help but note that it's usually, once they put a church out there, that's when you know a bunch of other houses are going to follow. And then I started kind of noticing how a lot of the churches tend to leave the inner city and want to go out in the country where they know people with money will eventually live when you got those houses that come in. You got a giant church. And I don't know, I have to say, I can't speak, I left off saying, I can't speak for every church, and I can't say, I can only say what I see, I could only say what I see. I do the best I can not to judge, but I don't see how people are even being reached. A lot of times, I'm looking at churches that run like a business, and kind of technically, I guess they are a business, especially being 501c3. Well, they're 501c3 whether they sign up or not, but the point being, they go ahead and sign up for it, and they run it like a business, and suddenly it becomes a vocation rather than a calling. But what's sad is I'm starting to notice that, I'm starting to realize, when I was a lot younger, I always believed that people wanted to do what God said for the sake of doing what God said, because they loved Him and they knew Him and it was the right thing to do. Because when I was growing up, it was a little bit more like that than it is now. So naturally, I assumed that, people, for instance, want to, reach out to the needy, not make a big giant circus out of it, take all the responsibility off the church, and have only a few people doing it, but actually everybody wants to participate and do it, like in some way see to it that they're doing it, not contributing to a cause. See, that's the thing, what people understand in Scripture, the life of a Christian, part of their life was that they were to help the poor. Each one of them are always supposed to help the poor. That should be part of what they do. Tzedakah, I think that's what they call it in Hebrew. Righteous acts. More of an obligation, but Christ, of course, puts compassion into it as well. Not just something you do as a duty, but something you want to do. And that's what I kind of thought the people would be like and would want to do. And I thought, well, if it's not in Scripture, the church won't want to practice it this way or that way, whatever they're doing. But, no, that's not the case either. And as it turns out, because churches run it like a business, you yourself, if you want to get anywhere in the church, rather than create a new faction of other people that like to brag on themselves about how they're not like the other churches, rather than do that, you might as well play the game or don't play at all. It's a little disheartening. But I already been disillusioned. I went through that for years, and that's pointless too, because my convictions haven't changed. I do not see that they will ever will change. I do see me losing faith in a certain way of going about things. There's no point in expecting certain things, that's for sure. But it's kind of sad seeing where things are going. But it doesn't have to be all bad, you know. There's a golden opportunity for somebody has always got to be around to tell the truth. You know, Jesus was raised in a very corrupt religious system, if you think about it. I mean, the Romans had their hands all up inside of the temple leadership of the Jews by his time. It was not at all like it was when Moses handed down the law. And so much had been added to it. But yet, where did you find Jesus on the Sabbath day? In a synagogue. On the feast days, he was there. And he spent a lot of time in the temple. He never ran away from it. I mean, eventually, circumstances separated Christianity from their Jewish roots, which is unfortunate, I think. Very unfortunate. Because everybody talks about, we want to go back to the first church. You have no idea what first century living was like. There's no way you could possibly really ever go back to that. The closest you'll ever come is sola scriptura, and that's it. But a lot of people don't like that because it's going to conflict with too much of what they got going on now. But Jesus never abandoned his post. What he did was he was there faithfully, but he spoke the truth always. Always spoke the truth. He did not compromise the truth. And that's what those of us in our religious institutions ought to do. Be faithful, build up the things that ought to be there. Don't support the things that shouldn't be. Don't be a pest about it, you know what I mean? Don't be disruptive and disrespectful, no. Although one would argue that Jesus, you know, overturned the money changers and the tables and stuff. That's all well and good. You know what, I'll be honest with you, that was Jesus. He did that, and that's cool, because he knows that he didn't go in there, he went in there actually upset with righteous indignation. We do something like that, we're just waiting for a reason to be, you know, all crazy and stuff. Those of us that think we have righteous indignation, we really actually just have a lot of pride, and we're looking for an excuse to, you know, whatever. Anyways, I feel like this whole thing is just a bunch of rambling, so I'm going to stop.